Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Enterprise Mobility Roundup podcast. Today, I'm joined by Clint Larson from Liberty Systems, and we're going to talk about RFID in the supply chain. Before we get started, Clint, can you give me a little bit of background about maybe yourself and what you do at Liberty and then what you guys focus on?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me, Brett, and giving me the opportunity to chat with you and your listeners. I've been, like you mentioned, name is Clint Larson. I'm the VP of Sales at Liberty Systems. My role here is I do a lot of high level strategy planning for sales and marketing. But I also do have, a large book of business that I still handle, and then also get involved with a lot of project management. So that's kind of myself here. Liberty, we primarily serve the manufacturing and distribution industries. So we've been doing that for 20 years. And we tell them, we do everything, if it's wireless in the warehouse, we can help them with it. So we're supporting everything from, wireless networks all the way down to the mobility hardware, and different middleware software that's being used on these devices.
Got it. And I guess when you say like the transportation logistics warehouse, that's what most people call supply chain, right?
Yeah, right. Correct. Yeah. So we're basically the supply chain. Yep. So, we do a little bit in retail. But yeah, we mostly focus on the distribution centers and manufacturing facilities within the supply chain.
Got to say, we're definitely keeping busy in the last 3 years with the.
Yes. The last 2 or 3 years definitely been busy. Absolutely.
Do you feel just in general, you guys are seeing a lot of loosening happening in supply chain? People are getting supply and it's not the backup or buildup we had 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think definitely for the products we resell and help support, definitely product is stock is a lot better. We're no longer sitting at 6 to 8 week lead times. A couple years ago, months it was sometimes getting up to the. But yes, stock is much better. We're seeing that everywhere from labels themselves, barcoding labels, all the way to the actual label printers and barcoding devices.
Got it. And so I guess to pivot a little bit, I want to talk through, pick your brain a bit about, I think the top we talked about, when we were chatting about this was RFID in the supply chain, and I think I like your approach because you guys are very pragmatic from a standpoint of like, here's how you get it out there as opposed to, it doesn't need to be a boil the ocean type strategy. But
Right.
I guess just to start out with RFID. So RFIDs are the tracking tags that you put on anything, whether it's your baggage at Delta or whether expensive products at a retail location. But for you, are you seeing a lot of uptick in RFID? I feel like with all those supply chain changes the last 3 years, I've seen a lot more. But what are you guys seeing as somebody who does a lot of implementation of readers and software?
Yeah, no, yes, we've certainly seen an uptick, especially in conversations and interest. I think industry wide, a lot of that is stemming from stuff like the Walmart mandate, where they're coming out and saying, hey, if you guys want to be a vendor of ours, you need to start tagging your product with RFID tags for us. And another thing too, industry wide, is people looked at this, maybe 7, 10 years ago, is a little bit more expensive. Cost has come down quite a bit now, so maybe they just want to revisit it. But in terms of our customers, a lot of it comes from, like you said, they found some sort of process inefficiency or some sort of inefficiency in their supply chain, and they want to look at some, solutions to help remedy it. And a lot of those conversations lead to RFID. So in our world, that's where I think a lot of our conversations are starting to come from, is people recognize over the last few years, like I said, the inefficiencies, and RFID can help remedy a lot of those.
Can you dive into that a bit more? So with those inefficiencies, of where is the value of RFID? What's that? It's like putting a 5 or 10 cent tag on every box. It doesn't seem expensive until you add it up, but like, where is
Yeah.
the actual value or value drivers you're seeing out of that?
Yeah, so it's all going to be different depending on what we're looking at doing. So, for example, if we want to look at getting better with knowing our actual inventory, so having a 99% accurate inventory, or knowing exactly when something ships or where it's shipping, and being able to automate all of that, we would be able to look at utilizing RFID there. If you want to get better at tracking high asset values, or you want to better check in, check out for your tool crib, RFID can be used there too. So there's a lot of value that can be brought utilizing RFID, but it's all going to be really dependent on, what you're looking to do. For example, distributors, they can put, an RFID reader at a dock door. And if my forklift driver drives out that dock door and my RFID system reads that tag and says, hey, this pallet was supposed to go out dock door 2 and you just brought it out dock door 4, my software is going to, give me a flag that says, hey, you're putting this in the wrong truck, go back and look at it again. So a lot of things for missed shipments, just having an overall better inventory.
Got it. So things coming in, things going out, and
Yeah.
actually knowing where things are within your facility or accuracy. Are you seeing
Yeah.
people actually get to that 99 or 98% accuracy on their cycle counts if they start tagging everything?
Yeah, because if you think about it, you're taking out the human portion of it, right? So I don't actually have to have an associate standing there at my shipping department scanning each package or pallet that's going on a fork truck, because everything's tagged with RFID. As soon as that entire pallet crosses that dock door where we have those RFID readers, everything's being automatically read. You're not missing anything. So yeah, absolutely, people are starting to do that, and they see value from that right away.
Got it. And the tags themselves, can you talk a bit about, where do those come from? Are those tagged at source? Are you putting labels when they, you ship them out to you? Are people tagging things in the facilities? What do you see most commonly around how things actually get tagged?
Yeah, again, it all kind of depends on the application you're looking to do, but more commonly, so for example, if I'm a distributor and I want to track my pallets or these assets internally, where they're going, what their process is, what their life cycle is in my facility, when they get in, when they leave, I'm going to tag that right at the point of receiving. So as soon as it comes in, I'm going to receive that item in, and no different than like I would print a barcode label at the point of receiving and putting on an internal label. It's the same process with RFID. It comes in the system or it comes in the facility. We scan it into the system. We say it's here, and now we're able to track it, wherever we have readers throughout the facility. But we know exactly what's in our facility, and then we know exactly what's not, because as soon as that passes the dock doors, gets on a truck, automatically pulled from our inventory. Now we have an accurate count of what's there.
And are you see people tag? Is it like at the pallet level, case level, item level? Like, is it where's the line where it makes sense to actually invest in putting a tag on something?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So if we're looking at, obviously keeping costs down, if we can, we want to look at tracking the pallet. A lot of it's going to be tracked by pallet. So usually larger, items, especially when we're talking about distribution, it's usually going to be by the pallet. But for example, if we're looking at like a work in process type scenario or application, you're not going to take that raw material as it's coming in the facility. You're going to wait until it's, starting its assembly process, put an RFID, tag it at stage one, and then you can then track it throughout the rest of the assembly process, knowing exactly where it is, what's left to be done on it, all of that. So again, RFID is fun there. It all kind of depends on, the issue we're looking to basically remedy, I guess.
And you mentioned the readers, the handheld versus the fixed readers. Can you describe quickly what the difference is there, and what the pros and cons are of those two solutions?
Yeah, so when you're looking at like a handheld reader, it's essentially an Android device. Most of them are going to be an Android device that it's a full-blown computer, so you can run your software applications on it. You can run your Microsoft Teams app on it if you need to, but it has an RFID reader, attached to that device. And essentially that RFID reader, that handheld, it's going to work very similar to a barcode scanner. I'm going to walk up to a product. I'm going to pull the trigger or the button on my scanner, and it's that RFID reader is going to start reading right then and there. And it's basically going to capture everything it sees. So if it sees 200 items, it's going to capture 200 items within, a couple seconds. If it only sees 3, it's only going to capture 3 of those. What's nice about a handheld reader is you're able to be mobile. So I can take it from receiving, I can take it to put away, I can take it to my, if I'm doing a cycle count, it just allows you to be much more mobile. Whereas a fixed reader, usually we're looking at a fixed reader when we want to do some sort of process automation. So rather than saying, hey, I put scanning a wrap barcode label saying, hey, I put this pallet in this location, I can have fixed readers at the beginning part of my aisle. So as soon as that pallet goes down that aisle, my system now knows that pallet is in that aisle and where it's going, and I'm able to automate all that. So fixed readers, kind of how they sound, they're stationary, they're in place, but they really help us when we're looking at doing a lot of that process automation. Whereas the mobile readers, more or less used for maybe some inventory processes or just basic warehouse processes.
And have you seen, I think I asked you about this before, but remind me, putting readers on a forklift or fork truck, is that something you're seeing a lot of, or is that still most people either fixed or handheld? Like is that something that, I always like the idea of like something automatically, I'm driving it down the aisle, right, it's doing, it's scanning for me. Like, is that something you actually see out there?
It's definitely there. Very low, at least for our customers, I would say, very low implementation rates. But, most people are doing some sort of handheld or fixed reader. But yes, I mean, there definitely is a capability to put these readers on forklifts. So as these drivers, just like they're doing their everyday job, driving up and down aisles, they're constantly taking, cycle counts. They're constantly knowing exactly what's in that aisle, just because the forklift and the reader is just kind of doing all that for them. Another kind of cool thing they have is they can actually put a reader at the kind of at the front of the forklift where the lift is. So as you're driving up to a pallet, it automatically scans that pallet, and the associate doesn't have to get off the forklift to say, "Hey, I'm picking up this pallet." It just knows. The system knows what forklift driver is picking it up and where they're going. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun stuff. But not a lot of adoption yet, but I definitely see it coming.
Yeah, I guess with that, like, if I'm a company that wants to get into RFID, how do I do it cheaply? What's the lowest thing I could do to actually start getting some of that inventory accuracy or helping grow that within my organization?
Yeah, it's a great question when we get options often. So we always say start small. So if there's an area where, hey, if there's a specific item we want to do a better job at tracking at, or a specific asset or a specific tool, we start there. But say, for example, to your scenario of wanting to just do a better job with inventory, it can be really as simple as soon as that pallet, those packages, whatever it is, comes into our facility, we're going to label it with a label, and that label is going to have our standard barcode on it, just like it normally would, but it also have an RFID inlay in it, so we can utilize an RFID reader, and we can basically say, okay, this is now in stock. I don't care where it is throughout the entire facility. I just want to know when it leaves my facility so I can keep an accurate inventory. So we just put a reader at a dock door or somewhere that we know that pallets or all pallets are going to leave. And now you're just basically able to kind of help with your inventory out that way. So that's a very small, scalable way you can, get into RFID easily. But again, it's usually best to find an area where we can start small, and kind of build from there.
I guess with that data itself, I know BlueFletch has done a lot of this integration with data coming off readers, but like, what is your guidance around what companies should be doing about how to take these automated RFID reads, flatten them or consolidate them and get them correlated to actual events? Like, what does that process look like? So if I have a WMS or SAP or Manhattan, how do I get that data into those end consumer systems?
Yeah, so it's a lot of times you're either going to be doing so RFID is kind of special. As you guys know, with integration, you're going to have some sort of third-party software. So you're going to have to get some sort of RFID software that's going to be communicating to your back end. But we can do it a couple different ways. So you can basically, just like you do internally right now if you're doing any kind of barcoding, as an item comes in, you can basically, your system knows what item that is or what order that item is a part of. You can basically put all that into an RFID tag too. So, like we talked about, the RFID inlay is within that barcode label. So if we're already doing a barcode label, we can already encode RFID tags if we want to. So now as that RFID tag and that product is moving throughout the facility, the same information that we encode on that through barcodes is the same information that's encoded on that through that RFID tag. So the system works the exact same way. We just have an additional step of a printer encoding it. Or we don't even have to utilize a printer. So a lot of times, customers will come to us and say, hey, we want to start doing this, but we don't want to invest in a special printer that's going to encode these for us. Great. You can just utilize the unique serial number that's on a tag and associate it with some sort of item or some sort of work order or some sort of pallet within your system. And now I don't need to actually encode that tag. I can just scan that with my RFID reader, and the system's going to know, hey, this serial number of this RFID tag is associated with this item or work order in my system.
Got it. So when you do those reads, you're getting serial number and then any additional data that's encoded. And I guess on the media itself, I know there's different types of RFID tags, some that carry more data than others, but
yeah,
what are the types of tags that you're seeing people use out there? What are the different RFID standards or the types of media you're seeing people consume?
Yeah, so the first one and the most common one is just like a standard 4x6 shipping label. So again, they're already using a 4x6 paper label in their warehouse, as whether it's shipping or receiving, whatever they're using it for. We can get a really low cost RFID label that basically mimics what they're already using, and get it in place right away. So that's pretty common, so just a basic paper low cost RFID label. But of course you get into the more specialized labels too. So, Zebra is a great partner of ours. And the reason we go to them a lot for their RFID labels and media is because they have so many different options. For example, we have a customer who they needed to be able to track their large HVAC systems in the assembly process. And RFID tags have a really hard time reading when they're on metal. So, but, Zebra has this specialized on metal RFID tag that kind of allows us to do that. You can get RFID tags that are for high heat. So, if you have a specific, crate that goes through an oven and a wash. And you need to be able to, track that crate because it's associated to some item. You're able to do that with different RFID tags. So, but more commonly, it's the shipping labels, right? It's the smaller paper standard labels that they just want to do, basic tracking in their facility. But, if you got to get more specialized, we have that too.
Yeah. And I guess your point is, you talked about this earlier, but on those labels, they come with their standard serial. So the GUID associated with the label, and then you can program additional things in there. So you can, I believe it's RAIN is the body that actually does the standards. You can get like allocated space for your labels. But what is, do I even need to like push my data to a label, or is it fine just having the standard serial number?
It's a lot of times you don't have to push your data. So a lot of times if we can easily, I shouldn't say easily, if we can associate that serial number to an item within your system, that's all we need to do. You don't have to push any data to it if you don't want to. But again, if you want to, you have to encode it with that RFID printer. And then it's essentially, like I said, it's no different than scanning that barcode. You're getting the same information within that RFID tag.
Got it. And I guess the big value of putting your information in there is that you're able to get other data from, if you send this to another partner, they're able to get data out of it, right?
Correct. Yeah. Because if you're not encoding that tag with any information. So for example, if I'm supposed to be shipping to Walmart and they, part of this Walmart mandate, and they want me to, put a bunch of information into this code. If I'm not doing that, when they receive it on their end, they're just going to get a serial number, and that's going to mean nothing to them. So yeah, there are going to be certain areas where you do need to encode that with your own data, because like you just said, it can then be passed on. But again, if you don't require that, just utilizing the serial number of that tag, again, especially in the initial process of just kind of getting familiar with RFID, it's a great way of doing it.
Yep. Awesome. Clint, give me like 1 sec. We're going to pause this. I got a delivery I just got to pick up. Hand.
Oh yeah, no problem.
All right. So the next question I had for you was specifically around like, where do you get labels from? Like you mentioned Zebra, like where, as a supplier, are you guys buying labels from somebody and then providing it to your customers? Are they buying them directly? What does that look like?
Yeah. So as a supplier, they're buying through us. So basically here at Liberty, so we have a couple of different partners, vendors we do work with, Zebra being one of them. When we have to look at more of the specialized labels, we are going to go to other companies. But yes, they're always being resold through us. And it's just kind of makes it easier that way for the customer. We can kind of control, that they're getting the correct label. When you start talking about RFID, you got to make sure that you have the correct inlay. You got to make sure you have the correct read range. So just being able to kind of control all of that for our customers just makes the whole process easier. And we're able to keep the cost down for them because it's all through partners. So, they're not paying MSRP for their labels.
Yeah. What are the big pitfalls you see? Like where have people failed at RFID projects? What are those things that like you see? Yeah. It's like it's cringy and you're like, don't deal like that. What comes to mind for you?
It's when they think it's, RFID is just, it's like a magic radio wave, right? It's going to go through everything. So it's going to go through water. It's going to go through cellophane. And they don't test anything. So, that's one of the biggest pitfalls is you need a test. You need to do a POC. We need to prove out the reader, the tag, the inlay. You got to do it all, the size of the label, because there's so many things that can go wrong. It's a very convoluted process. I don't mean to make it scary, but it's just the way it is. And that's why, for us, we make it easier because we kind of help with all that. We kind of say, hey, you need to look at this one, look at this one. And we know they're going to work together versus, people are just trying to do it on their own. I'm going to buy a standard 4x6, paper RFID label, and I'm going to try to read it from my reader that's, 26 feet up in the air. Not going to work. So I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls is people just assume that the read ranges are all the same. It can read through anything. I'm not going to have any, issues with it, which is just not the case, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I know Zebra has the overhead readers that like I call them spaceships, but I can't remember the actual number of it. Have you seen people implement those, or is it mainly like the fixed readers and handhelds? I've actually never seen anyone implement in production with that.
Yeah, no, I personally have not been involved in implementation like that, but I do know customers that do have that. And, it's interesting because a lot of, similar to what Zebra has too, their, an active RFID is a completely other thing where it's a tag that's constantly on. So you can essentially track its location, track the pallet, track the forklift, track the asset, no matter where it is in the facility, all in real time. So that's kind of another cool thing that RFID has is, not just passive RFID tags that only read when you read them, but active RFID tags that are always on. You can essentially track items throughout your entire facility. So
more of a beacon, like.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and a lot of people are doing that when they have, high value assets of, maybe different tools or maybe different, systems, whatever they have there. But yeah, so we personally have not been any kind of involved with any kind of implementation, but the technology is definitely out there.
When you do those implementations, what does that project look like? So you mentioned you do like the sales, you're doing some of the PM work, you're working with your team on clients. What is that like from start to finish? If you're going to go in and help somebody, like what are the phases you go through? What are the things you do to actually help somebody get RFID to their facility?
Yeah, and it's kind of one thing that kind of I think makes us unique here at Liberty is we are smaller, so we don't have as much stuff we got to do. But kind of what we do is we always start off with some sort of on-site analysis. So we're going to go on site. I'm going to bring a team with me. We're going to walk through what you're looking to do. We're going to walk through your facility. We're going to see what your racks look like, what your ceilings look like, what your, infrastructure, network wise looks like to see what we can do. And then from there, we help build out your plan. We don't charge to go on site. It's basically just so we can help you figure out what exactly is going to work and get you to where you want to go. But once we get that first analysis done, we then write up a report and we say, hey, here's how we can get you to where you want to go. We have to look at this hardware. We have to look at this reader. We got to look at this kind of RFID label to get us the read range we want. And then from there, we send samples out. Here are your labels. Here are your RFID readers. Here's your RFID handheld. Let's get a POC done. Let's prove this out. Let's find out where the issues are and then, fix those issues from there and then keep moving forward. And then once we have all of that done in place, we have our software figured out. We have all this working. Then we start talking about, okay, let's start rolling out some hardware. Let's start buying some stuff and getting this going for you.
From a timing standpoint, what should someone expect? Is it a 8-week process, 16-week process? Like what's like, if you have everything line up and all the dominoes work, like what does that look like from a timing perspective, ideally for you?
If we do everything up front where we get our data figured out, we got our implementations figured out, we get our APIs figured out with our RFID software and our backend. If all of that is done up front, we can come in and get a working hardware and working solution in place. I would say 8 weeks is probably pretty close to it. I would say a lot of these projects are closer to a year long. By the time you get started, by the time you get stuff with data figured out, by the time you get some hardware in there for demoing, it's about an 8 to 12 month process.
Yeah, but that POC phase up front ideally is like a quarter. So spend a quarter to POC and then roll out to the rest of the facility, your plans.
A lot of the time is going to come from getting your data back and forth. How are we going to do that? How we want that implementation to be? How we want that the communication to be? And then from there, the hardware stuff, I don't want to say it's easy, but easy for us because we do it all the time. So we're really easy to just go in there right away and say, hey, here's what we need to look at. Here's our demo kit. Let's start proving this out.
Yeah. Are there any situations you've seen where you've gone in, done a pilot and be like, this is just not for you guys, stick with barcodes? Has that happened to you?
Absolutely. It's just one recently there. They put up a new warehouse and they wanted to, track pallets and they wanted to know exactly where that pallet was without having to, do any kind of barcode scanning. Great. We can do that. But from the budget they were working with it was not going to be possible. I mean, you would have to put an RFID reader at the beginning of every one of their aisles just to know what aisle it's down, or you'd have to have, RFID readers throughout the entire ceiling to know exactly where that pallet is. So yeah, we see it often. Again, I think because people think it's kind of magic in a way. So they think, hey, I can, do this with, maybe as little stuff as possible. But it does happen. But a lot of times we can get people to where they want to go.
Sort of on that thread, like, what is the ROI for this? I know you mentioned you're going to know when things come in and out better, have less missed shipments, you're going to have better inventory accuracy. What do you typically see for ROI? Are you guys doing that calculation for customers as part of your assessment up front?
Yeah, so that's all part of the assessment, and it's all calculated up front too, because again, it all kind of depends on the issues we're trying to fix. If we're trying to fix, chargeback fees and misship fees, your ROI is going to be, again, depending on how large those are, which some get pretty big, your ROI is really, really fast because you're able to kind of catch those misshipments before they ever go out. But I would say, anywhere from, 12 months is probably an accurate one. Because, cost has come down. It's still expensive, but cost has come down quite a bit. So I would say 12 months is a pretty typical ROI, but again, can be faster. It could also be longer, unfortunately.
Got it. But yeah, for a capital project, it's going to pay for itself within a year.
Yes.
You have those readers in your facility for the next 10 years. So
Yep. And it might come down to, there's been times too where we kind of walk through the ROI and because of the process they're looking to remedy, and yes, RFID makes sense and they know it makes sense and they want RFID, but they still understand that the ROI isn't going to be what they were expecting. There's still value behind it. But again, each is kind of, each scenario is a little bit different.
Awesome. Well, Clint and I think we're at the end of time. I want to just do a quick recap. A couple of notes I took around things you called out. I think the important one of the first ones was RFID is meant to augment your existing process. It's no magic. What do you call it? It's no like magic radio waves. It's going to come.
Yeah, right.
So imagine taking your process, your tracking, your barcodes, helping to automate that, get better accuracy around it. I think the next thing you talked about was the start small. So a single fixed reader or an handheld scanner, do that, actually get those captures. If you're already scanning with I'm assuming like a Zebra scanner, putting in the RFID sled on there is probably not a ton more investment on top of what you're already doing.
Right.
You talked about the tags, which I thought was interesting, getting your tags, like they already have serials on them. You don't need to go and, buy printers to do that. You can just have them pre-made for you. And then the last thing you just talked about is like the partners like you guys. So have somebody who knows how to do it, bring them in, then get a POC done, actually build out that cost model. So I think those are all really, really good points. Great summary. Clint, for you, like if people want to find out more information about Liberty or pick your brain about like some of your experiences with this, where would they reach out to you guys at?
Yeah, obviously visit our websites, libertysystems.com, great place to go. We also have, we have a LinkedIn, page where we're always putting out different blog posts regarding the industry, RFID, robotics, everything we're involved with. We also have a YouTube channel where we do a lot of product reviews. We also do, different concept discussions kind of like this too. So, check out the YouTube channel, check out the LinkedIn page, our website, or of course, call us directly here at the office. Someone's always going to pick up, someone's going to answer your phone. You're not going to get, put on some sort of automated system. So
libertysystems.com, regular spelling, right? No weird spelling, no startup spelling.
Yes. libertysystems.com. Yes, that's where you need to go. And yeah, you can find everything you need to know about us there.
Excellent. Awesome. Clint, thank you very much for joining me today, walking through this. Definitely check it out. If you check out the YouTube reviews. So if you're interested in learning more about what these guys take a look at. Thank you for joining. If you're listening to us along, for joining for another episode of the Enterprise Mobility Roundup podcast. If you have questions for me or my team, reach out to us at info@bluefletch.com and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Clint.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.